But sometimes we lose media, lost media. Then we all go search for media. Lost media, it's not found, it's lost. Lost media. Sometimes it's well known, we all know that it's media. Lost media. We love to search for media, but it's not that media. Lost media. It's lesser known, lost media. Not well known, but it's still lost. Lost media. Lost media. It's lesser known, lost media. Here with Mr. Shaw.
Welcome back, Chimera Crew, to Volume 82 of Lesser Known Lost Media, the show where we cover pieces of lost media that you just don't hear about on YouTube very often. With every episode, we start with 4 mundane, safe-for-work pieces of lost media and end with a 5th, spicier piece. Before we begin, if you enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to click the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. It's a small thing for you, but it means so much for the channel. And if you'd like to be a super extra special help to the channel, you can consider becoming a YouTube channel member, Patreon patron, or even heading on over to eBay and Mercari and checking out my wide range of custom miniatures. With all that being said, let's begin. At number 1, we have OK Soda, a lost marketing VHS tape for a discontinued fizzy drink from 1994. OK Soda is a fizzy drink created by the Coca-Cola Company in 1993 that was targeted for people born in the 1960s, aka Generation X. To emphasize this, the drink's commercials and overall design were unlike anything seen in sodas, with details such as having an unnerving tone and its only use of colors being black, white, gray, and red. The drink ended up being discontinued in 1995 due to poor sales in test markets and has since never been brought back. While most material made for OK Soda can be found online, there is a VHS tape meant for marketing purposes that to this day has not resurfaced. The tape's length runs at 10 minutes and is described as having the same style and energy as the drink's marketing. Outside of this, no other details are known. As of now, there is only one known copy of the tape in existence, with it being owned by Reddit user OKTumbleweed7146, who posted pictures of it in multiple subreddits. However, despite him stating that he will digitize it and post it online, this seems to have never occurred, as the tape's owner stopped posting about it in 2023, rendering the VHS tape completely lost. While details on this one are a bit scarce, I do love it. I mean, a mysterious lost videotape is the premise that's launched a million creepypastas, and this is a real-life example. Now, it's probably just a kind of weird commercial on it, but still, I mean, it's an unknown, mysterious tape that's said to have, been from a product that was not on the market for very long, did not make a huge splash, was meant for a specific group, had unnerving materials, and now the tape has mysteriously disappeared with only one known copy in existence from a Redditor who mysteriously stopped posting. So, this one, what's not to love about this one? At number 2, we have Putian Yu, which are partially found lyrics for the unofficial national anthem of China circa 1878 to 1896. Putian Yu, Whole Sky Song, also known as The World's Delight, is a song that is widely considered as the first national anthem of China, though was never officially adopted by the government. Putian Yu was often considered the same to a different song named Hua Zhuge, but was eventually proven that these are two different songs. Now, in 1878, the anthem was created by Zheng Jizhe to represent China in international events. The song, however, was rejected by the Qing court for the official adoption, but was still widely recognized and played internationally till its next unofficial replacement, the Tune of Li Zhongtang. On the 18th of September 1914, the only known version which was recorded was made by the Victor Military Band. The record made in 1914 is still available today, however it only contains the instrumental of the song. The song was mostly forgotten in China until the 1980s, when it was first mentioned by music historian Liao Fushu, who lamented that the song was lost in China by that point. The lyrics of the song, however, have since remained mostly lost, with only part surviving, and it goes as follows. And while the article does have the Chinese translation, I don't know how to read Chinese, so I'm going to read the translated into English version for you all now. Who unified the old nation, the ancient Asian civilization of 4,000 years, but most lamentable, Judea, India, and Poland, the hatred of losing their country, it is heartbreaking to discuss. Little weird. This surviving portion indicates that the full song was likely nationalistic in tone, with a strong focus on the then ongoing century of humiliation, a concept in Chinese political discourse referring to a period from approximately 1839 to 1949, where China was subjugated by the United States, the Empire of Japan, and the great powers of Europe. The concept emerged during the late Qing era among both royalists and anti-monarchists for being popularized by the Republic of China following the 1911 revolution. The fragment likens China's predicament at the time to the Roman siege of Jerusalem, the British conquest of India, and the partitioning of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth by Austria, Germany, and Russia. This was just kind of interesting because, it's not often that a national anthem goes missing. I know it wasn't an official national anthem, but still it was very popular, and a lot of people had a sense of this song representing them as a people, and it's the fact that it's like almost completely gone is nuts to me. At number 3, we have Spider-Man, the lost original design made by Jack Kirby of the Marvel Comics character in 1962. Sorry guys, I'm stumbling with my words today, I don't know why. I could edit it out, I'm not going to. Anyway, if I need to tell you who Spider-Man is, we've got bigger problems, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Spider-Man is a famous American comic character designed by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee in 1962, known for his full face mask with large eyes and his red and black costume that features a spiderweb pattern and his ability to shoot spiderwebs through his wrists. Despite his famous design being mostly attributed to Steve Ditko, he didn't always look like this, and his first design was actually made by comic book artist Jack Kirby, and it featured several different characteristics that were eventually just never used. Spider-Man's first appearance was first introduced in the issue of Amazing Fantasy number 15, and it was written by Stan Lee, planned to be designed by Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko was in charge of the inking for the comic. During the production stage of the character, Jack Kirby presented to Stan Lee the first design of the superhero, consisting of a muscular man that featured a half-face mask that exposed the mouth and jaw of the character similar to Captain America, another character that was designed by Kirby, a chest with a design similar to Ant-Man, and also carried a gun that it was meant to shoot the spiderweb through. Lee rejected this idea, and several conflicts arose about the character's design and its story. Stan Lee then decided to fully discard this design and hand the work of visuals to Steve Ditko, who would later introduce a more childish-looking Spider-Man that would later become the version of the character used for the comic, and that is still used in modern media. So if the image is lost, what's the image you're seeing on screen? Well, in 2012, an alleged image of the Jack Kirby version of Spider-Man surfaced online, and it was considered to be the long-lost sketches. This image would later be debunked by superhero comic fans who identified that said image actually came from the splash page of Tales of Astonish number 51, and it was of the character Giant Man that was altered to look like the description of the lost drawings, so this image you're seeing is a hoax. Now, as to the availability of the original sketch, while none of the pages that Jack Kirby did of the character in his early design remain available, we have a drawing made by Steve Ditko depicting how an early design was before being changed. Now, it took me a second to find this sketch, but I did find it. It's here on the screen, and yeah, I definitely think, as amazing of an artist as Jack Kirby was, I definitely think the Ditko Spider-Man is much better. I don't think if this is the Spider-Man that first made its appearance on the pages of Marvel Comics, I don't think we'd be talking about him today. At number 4, we have God's Face, lost unedited images from the 4chan ARG from 2014. God's Face was an ARG, alternate reality game, made by Jess A. Penyam, known for having created The Setup Wizard, a fanfiction of the Harry Potter universe written by J.K. Rowling. that gained immense popularity in the X forum from 4chan. It briefly tells how an anonymous person asked for help to fix his friend's laptop that was infected. At the same time, paranormal things were happening at his home. The virus created strange images inside the laptop. One of them contained a phrase which reads Pi, EPI, Pi OU, along with a binary code that translated meant God. After having reconstructed the face and coming to the conclusion that it was the face of God, the OP of that thread stopped updating, giving the majority of the users the conclusion that he disappeared, although that was not the case. The next morning, the OP updated with another thread giving proof of his identity and later started a nightly live broadcast on Twitch to capture paranormal events related to the events in the original thread, and that would be his last original appearance. Now, on December 23rd of 2024, user Joka uploaded the video titled Did I Find the Origin of 4chan's God's Face, which in addition to interviewing Jess about the whole story, also reveals to us that Jess was unable to find the two original photos that he used and modified to create the infamous image. Two, because Jess comments that he worked using the top and bottom of his own face. Now, he did take some photos of him mimicking the face, but again, as to this day, while we do know its origin, we do not have the two photos. I'll be honest, I'd heard of God's face before. It was never really one of my favorite pieces of internet horror, though I did not know until making this video that the origin of the face, the images, the original photos were lost. It's a lot like, say, a less known version of Jeff the Killer, which of course is a piece of lost media that has been covered to death on YouTube. We will not talk about it anymore here, but it is nice to cover pieces that don't get the same publicity, even though they are essentially the same thing. Though we do seem to know a little bit more about this one than we do about, well, you know. Alright guys, we're going to get to that final piece in just a moment, but again, just give me a brief moment to talk to you about some of my other channels. We have 4 satellite channels now that we are trying to grow. There is Hooked on Monkey Phonics, where you can find free-to-use instrumental background tracks, much like the one that I'm using right now. I have stopped using outside instrumental tracks. I make all of my own. I do use AI, and you are free to use what I have created as well. Anything that is posted on there is free to use. I just ask that if you use it in a video, you use the attribution link, just so people know where you found it. But again, I will never ask you for a dime to use any of those. There's also original songs over on Songs by Sean, which I have recently posted a album of British invasion style 1960s era-esque songs all about the works of H.P. Lovecraft, one of my favorite weird fiction authors. We also have Mr. Sean Reads Reddit. Now, there's not a lot on there right now, but I am going to start doing Reddit stories again, so that's where those will be. And then, of course, the creepypastas that I so love will be over on Creepy Monkey Pasta, leaving much of this channel will be, again, Mondays and Fridays will be Lost and Found Media, Wednesdays will be kind of a wild card, whatever I feel like doing, and Mondays typically will be a member-exclusive video. And again, you can get access to all the member-exclusive videos by joining as low as the $1 tier, either here on this channel or over on Patreon, link in the description. With all that being said, let's get to today's spicy piece. Alright guys, this one is tagged NSFL due to its disturbing subject material. You've been warned. Today we have EastEnders, the lost, scrapped, baby swap scenes, scripts, and storyboards of the BBC soap opera 2010 to 2011. So, between December 2010 to July 2011, a controversial and highly emotional storyline of the BBC's long-running soap opera EastEnders commenced. It featured the character Ronnie Branning losing her newborn baby James to sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. In a desperate situation, and without thinking rationally, Ronnie swaps her deceased son for Cat Moon's baby, Tommy, triggering a series of events that eventually lead to her confession and Moon reuniting with her son. Aside from being an especially traumatic storyline for the actors involved, it also prompted more than 14,000 complaints to the BBC and communications regulator Ofcom, particularly over the negative and heavily unrealistic portrayal of a grieving mother. Because of the backlash, the BBC announced it would prematurely end the storyline and remove several scenes deemed too upsetting for the general audience. The full scripts, storyboards, and deleted baby swap scenes have never been publicly released. Now, since its inception in 1985, EastEnders has not shied away from tackling taboo subject matter. For example, still stumbling over my words today, but for example, Mark Fowler historically became the first mainstream soap opera drama character to test positive for HIV, in an ongoing narrative that was highly acclaimed and may well have influenced how British society treated those living with the virus. Similarly, Ronnie Mitchell, portrayed by Samantha Womack, is featured in several traumatic narratives. At only 14, she gave birth to Danielle, whom she was forced to give up for adoption by her abusive father Archie. Having been convinced by Archie that Danielle is dead, Ronnie initially refuses to believe her now 19-year-old daughter when the latter reveals all at Archie's latest wedding in 2009. But just as Ronnie realizes the truth and desires to embrace Danielle, the latter is tragically run over and passes away in front of her mother. The ordeal naturally devastated Ronnie. She experienced further trauma after she suffered a miscarriage that was that very same year. But a year following these events, Ronnie happily discovers she is pregnant with a baby boy, fathered by her soon-to-be husband Jack Branning, Scott Maslin. During this time, Ronnie begins a friendship with Kat Moon, played by Jessica Wallace, who is also expecting a new son and wedding with Alfie Moon, played by Shane Ritchie. Both mothers would give birth at the end of 2010. However, a sequence of horrific events would emerge in the next few months, which would considerably alter their lives. In the months leading to December 2010, EastEnders teased that Ronnie and Kat's seemingly rosy futures would be anything but. On the 11th of November 2010, the BBC announced that not only would Ronnie lose her baby to sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, but she would also commit a seemingly unforgivable crime during her initial grief. The storyline began on New Year's Eve 2010 with Ronnie discovering James passed away in his cot. What triggers SIDS has not yet been fully explained according to the NHS. It is, however, believed to be exceptionally uncommon in Britain, with approximately 200 infants 6 months or younger typically passing away annually from cot death. In November of 2010, the statistics stood at about 300 deaths, which indicates SIDS is becoming a rare phenomenon as the decades pass. Before this, Kat is recovering in bed when she and her husband Alfie learn she has suffered a hemorrhage. She is rushed to the hospital, with Alfie leaving Tommy in the care of Kat's father Charlie at the Queen Vic. But as New Year's celebrations commence within the pub, a frantic Ronnie enters via a back door, having been unable to seek any immediate support. Suddenly she hears Tommy's cries and carefully walks upstairs to the bedroom without attracting any attention. Just as the residents count down the new year, Ronnie tearfully declares that Tommy is her boy and proceeds to swap babies. She returns home with Tommy, with Queen Vic customers again none the wiser. Soon afterwards, Ronnie deeply regrets her decision, but ultimately it is too late to amend things. Alfie discovers Tommy's lifeless body in bed. While Kat is initially skeptical, believing the baby is not Tommy, she is ultimately convinced by Alfie, much to her devastation. Elsewhere, weight and clubfoot discrepancies with James are spotted on by Ronnie's assigned midwife, but this does not raise enough suspicion to prompt an investigation. For the time being, Ronnie's terrible secret remains exclusively with her, with Jack delighted to be the boy's father. Her chance to come clean and say goodbye to her actual son is denied by Kat, despite Alfie's objections, the former having demanded the funeral be conducted with only a few family members and without any hangers-on people present. She also angrily refuses to let her father attend the funeral. Charlie notably ended up in a drunken stupor during the New Year's celebrations, thus failing to monitor Tommy's well-being. Consequently, Kat blamed her father for Tommy's unexpected death. Following the funeral, an increasingly desperate Ronnie enters the Queen Vic and attempts to explain to the grieving couple that their son is actually alive. However, her decision to give the baby to Kat only serves to devastate the latter, preventing the truth from coming out. Jack also becomes confused and frustrated with his wife's overly erratic behavior and demands she seek support. Worse still, Ronnie's actions trigger the collapse of Kat's relationship with her father, the latter consequently deciding to leave Watford to allow space between them during this difficult time. Kat's marriage is also severely strained, with her having revealed to Ronnie and Alfie's cousin Michael that following an affair, Michael was actually Tommy's biological father. In a moment of desperation following a failed attempt to reconnect with Alfie, Kat passionately kisses Michael and reveals that she wants a proper relationship with him. However, with Tommy having passed away, Michael sees nothing in common between them. All this occurs in front of a heartbroken Alfie. The once happy couple agree to separate following several rows. Ronnie's paranoia worsens over time, triggering a breakdown at the Queen Vic. This prompts Jack to beg that she see a counselor, especially as their relationship is now under threat. She initially agrees to this, but backs out without Jack's knowledge at the last minute. Around the same time, Kat and Alfie learn that the coroner's report on Tommy's death indicates Sid's was likely the cause. Without professional help, Ronnie becomes further unsettled and believes her mother Glinda is beginning to unravel the truth, and she therefore asks her cousin Phil Mitchell to ensure Glinda leaves for a while. Ronnie also begins to separate herself from Jack. Jack subsequently attempts to mend his relationship with Ronnie, but the latter remains unexplainably distant. Ronnie also begins courting Michael's attention, resulting in them kissing. Upon learning this, Jack furiously demands to know what is going on with Ronnie, who insists that Michael's kiss was a non-consensual one, but refuses to elaborate on her strange behavior. All of this occurs during Tanya Branning and Greg Jessup's wedding. Said wedding is cut short when, after they learn about a car accident involving Tanya's former husband Max and their daughter Abby. As Ronnie visits the hospital, she spots James's original bed and finally decides to come clean on the situation. That night, she gives the baby to Kat, who becomes highly distressed and refuses to believe Ronnie's explanation of events. The incident also triggers a furious row between Alfie and Jack, the latter demanding his son back. He begins to realize all was not as it seemed after Ronnie turns herself in to the police. After finally learning the terrible truth, a destroyed Jack says goodbye to Tommy and places him in the care of social services. Initially, Kat refuses to conduct a mandatory interview with social services, but later changes her mind, allowing her and Alfie to finally be in custody of Tommy again. On the 7th of July 2011 episode, Ronnie is due to be sentenced. During Ronnie's final day of freedom for the foreseeable future, Michael attempts to frame her for a second kidnapping of Tommy. This leads to a final confrontation between Ronnie and Kat, the latter slapping her former friend, and, in a fit of rage, claims Ronnie is fortunate to still be alive. Kat, Jack, and Ronnie's sister Roxy soon discover Michael orchestrated this as revenge for Ronnie not reciprocating his feelings towards her. An outraged Jack punches Michael before he and Roxy attempt to prevent Ronnie's day of justice. However, even though Kat eventually forgives Ronnie in court and insists she should avoid imprisonment, the latter accepts her fate. Ronnie is sentenced to 3 years behind bars, allowing justice to be served and granting her the time needed to mend her conscience. The move reflected Womack's decision to leave EastEnders, though she ultimately returned in September of 2013. Following her early release, Ronnie meets up with Kat. They discuss the strange events during the former's incarceration and attempt to repair their fractured relationship. During the scripting and filming for the storyline, EastEnders higher-ups anticipated the portrayal of Sid's and the character's reaction to it would require delicate handling. Filming was an emotionally taxing affair. Some actors reportedly broke down and required extensive time out to complete their scenes. Hence, counseling was allegedly provided to affected talent. Womack and Ritchie both admitted that the storyline had affected them personally. Some scriptwriters also allegedly refused to work on the storyline. Still, EastEnders held a remit for tackling difficult subject matter, and a storyline about Sid certainly fit that scope. Upon learning of the planned storyline, the Foundation for the Study of Infant Deaths, the FSID, now the Lullaby Trust, initially praised the show, particularly its director, Joyce Epstein, claimed that the story could promote public awareness of SIDS provided it accurately reflected those affected by its devastating impact. FSID later claimed it provided consultancy regarding the condition and professional involvement, but did not influence the storyline itself. Meanwhile, the BBC claimed that the FSID also enabled contact between the broadcaster and parents victimized by cot death. The storyline having attracted a generally positive reaction before it went to air. Before airing the first 2 episodes on New Year's Eve 2010 and New Year's Day 2011, EastEnders producers opted to conduct a test screening. It soon became apparent that the certain scenes would require alteration, having been declared too upsetting for a general audience. 3 scenes were supposedly toned down. The first came when Ronnie discovered James has passed away in his cot. The devastated mother gently held James's lifeless cold hand in a scene that was completely removed in the final cut. EastEnders additionally self-censored. Kat's hemorrhage after the original recording was declared too graphic to show on pre-watershed television. The extent of blood can be briefly seen at around the 12:45 mark. Finally, Tommy's cries as Ronnie entered the Queen Vic were quieted. According to the show's executive producer Brian Kirkwood and an EastEnders insider, the scene's alteration had no real effect on the storyline and were conducted to avoid provoking needless controversy. The New Year's Eve episode attracted 7.3 million viewers, down from the 9.65 million viewers for the 30th of December episode and the 8.67 million the previous Eve special obtained. Meanwhile, the New Year's Day episode attracted 8.95 million, down from the 11.6 million the year before. By the 4th of January, the story was already becoming a heat magnet, provoking over 3,400 complaints to the BBC. 2 days later, it had almost surpassed the 6,000 mark. Communications regulator Ofcom received around 1,044 complaints after initially denying reports that it would open an investigation into the storyline. A full adjudication would be published on the 1st of August of 2011. There were two main criticisms against the storyline. Some critics, like Boyd Hilton of Heat, believed the date of the broadcast was completely wrong, having commenced in a period when families are most likely to be concerned about their kin. But the main outrage was centered on Ronnie's character throughout the storyline. While studies such as from Richard D. Goldstein determined parents were more likely to be guilt-ridden and isolate themselves than those who have never experienced the ordeal, the point stands that kidnapping from grieving parents are exceptionally rare. Ronnie's actions were lambasted as being heavily inaccurate, leading to concerns it was representing devastated mothers as mad baby snatchers. It also prompted a further statement by FSID, who also heavily criticized the baby swap and distanced themselves from the overall storyline. Birmingham Mail's Roz Laws deemed the story was ludicrous, criticizing the show for putting Ronnie in another tragic narrative and questioning Kat's intelligence for not being able to identify her son. By the 7th of January 2011, the baby swap had surpassed the record number of claims for an EastEnders storyline, which ironically went to Danielle's fatal car accident at around the 7,000 figure. Amidst the backlash, it was announced on the 6th of January that the storyline would undergo drastic changes. For the funeral scenes, which aired on the 11th of January, a scene featuring Kat carrying her baby in the coffin was removed, though a publicity shot was used to advertise the episode. Further Kat and Alfie scenes were removed, including the poignant moment when Kat places her son's toy lion into the coffin. The following episode, televised on the 13th of January, saw a scene removed depicting Ronnie speaking to James at his grave, the monologue having also been used to promote the program. Filler scenes were hastily inserted, such as the sudden debut of Poppy Meadow. These hastily recorded scenes received derision from EastEnders fans for being pointless, and had fragmented the funeral segments. Despite the unending controversies, the baby swap storyline was a rating success. Some of its episodes reached over 11 million viewers, considerably more than the show's 9 million average. However, in the wake of seemingly never-ending media and fan scorn, a top-level meeting was conducted at BBC offices. A consensus formed that the storyline would wrap up in Easter instead of the following Christmas. One insider for The Independent claimed production for the now condensed storyline resulted in crew members having torn up unused scripts and storyboards. The changes also likely accommodated Womack's first departure from the show. Speculation from the tabloid The Sun alleged her exit centered entirely on the baby swap saga. This gained legs when Womack expressed to Inside Soap the harrowing nature of the filming and the relevant scenes, with a realistic silicone doll describing the ordeal as the most horrific 4 weeks of my life. The Sun's claims were denied by BBC executives and Womack's agent. However, in a 2013 interview with the Daily Mail, Womack stated that she had felt burnt out acting in several emotionally charged storylines over 4 years, having also been uncomfortable with the intertwining of a deceased baby and subsequent kidnapping for her character's then final narrative. Worse still, Womack also received horrific verbal abuse on the streets from angered fans, which further motivated her decision to leave. By the time Ofcom published its full investigation, over 14,000 complaints had been sent to it and the BBC. Its education considered whether the storyline violated Rule 2.3 of the Broadcasting Code, namely how it handled the transmission of potentially offensive material, especially prior to the 9 p.m. watershed. In its decision, it accepted Ronnie's actions were extreme, but that EastEnders had always intended to deviate from the typical behavior of a grieving mother. Ofcom cited that Ronnie had recently experienced several other traumatic events, including the deaths of her previous children and learning the full extent of the abuse she suffered at the hands of her father. Thus, it determined that Ronnie's decision was the product of extreme personal trauma rather than based exclusively on James's passing. It declared that the show had provided the mandatory editorial context for this storyline, and that it was not too dissimilar from other taboo subjects EastEnders had previously covered. It was also satisfied that the scenes had been carefully handled to avoid being overly graphic or traumatizing. Finally, it noted the storyline had received extensive promotion, giving viewers ample warning of its context. Thus, it ruled the show had not breached the broadcasting code. The storyline was defended by BBC's controller of drama production, John York, BBC Vision director, Jana Bennett, as well as by Kirkwood, Wallace, and Ritchie. Their general rationale reflected Ofcom's finding that EastEnders would select and aim to appropriately handle sensitive topics, and that Ronnie's actions were never planned to replicate how a mother would usually react to SIDS. Ritchie also denied claims of a highly emotional filming atmosphere, insisting in an interview with The People that the cast really enjoyed filming the scenes and had backed each other up when things got challenging. Meanwhile, Kirkwood rubbished claims that the storyline lacked believability. He insisted that the scripts reflected how the show's extensive research on SIDS, including via FSID and a maternity nurse's consultancy. Kirkwood declared that he was very proud of the final product. Nevertheless, he and other EastEnders officials conducted a meeting with people offended over the storyline, with Mumsnet founder Justine Roberts noting most attendees were likely mothers who had faced the heartbreak SIDS causes. And again, despite the sheer number of complaints, the storyline was a ratings success. Even episodes following Ronnie's arrest drew significantly above the show's average audience. It also enabled the show to win 3 accolades at the 2011 All About Soap Bubble Awards. The storyline itself won the Best Baby Drama Award. Meanwhile, Wallace was declared the Best Actress, with her and Ritchie also having earned the Best Comeback Award. In a 2015 OnePoll survey, The Baby Swap was declared the 20th greatest British soap line story. British soap storyline. I can't talk today. Even so, the storyline's disturbing subject matter and its major backlash from the media, fans, and SIDS support groups have made it among the darkest and most controversial of soap opera narratives. So what exactly is Lost? I know it took us a long time to get to this point, but what is Lost? This is all about Lost media. Well, at least 6 scenes, including from the New Year's Eve and funeral episodes, were either altered or entirely scrapped to avoid causing needless harm. Of the altered scenes, Kat's blood-filled pajamas can briefly be seen at around 12:45 in the episode, while Tommy's cries near the episode's conclusion were kept in a slightly muted form. The scene featuring Ronnie touching James's hand was completely removed, considering these changes were made even before the resulting backlash. The original episode seen before a test audience is unlikely to be publicly released. The cut funeral segments were the result of EastEnders toning down the storyline. Of these, a publicity photograph of Kat carrying the coffin and a BBC synopsis of Ronnie at the grave are publicly available, but no photos have surfaced showing Kat placing Tommy's toy into the coffin. The narrative's climax was originally intended for December of 2011, before EastEnders officials agreed to have the truth revealed at Easter, with Ronnie's imprisonment ultimately planned in early July. It is unclear whether the independent insiders' torn-up scripts and storyboards should be taken literally. Regardless, none of the original extended plot materials have ever publicly surfaced. Now, note, before what I say next, I've never seen EastEnders, I have no children, I don't watch soap operas, and nor do I want children, but overall this sounds like a very, very serious subject matter portrayed by a soap opera, which, while there is definitely drama and some darker themes in soap operas, they are meant to be a kind of mindless entertainment, in my opinion. Again, I don't watch them. I've seen bits and pieces. My mom used to watch them. I found them very boring when she would watch them as a child. But ultimately, this is some serious stuff for a soap opera. But ultimately, it's definitely interesting when TV pushes the boundaries. But at the same time, when choosing to cover, serious topics like this, it's definitely a gamble, and something as devastating as the loss of a child. Again, as I said, I have no children. I do not want any children, but I do understand and realize that the loss of a child is one of the most horrible things a human being can go through. And so I can see why, even if it was not their intention, they were not saying this is exactly how a grieving mother would act, how it could be offensive to people who have experienced this situation, and ultimately because of that, several bits and pieces of this storyline are lost to us. And, that is what it is, I suppose. And that's the video, guys. Thanks for sticking with me on this one. That last piece was definitely longer. Our runtime is definitely longer than these episodes typically go, but I thank you so much. Again, if you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. What was your favorite piece mentioned today? What are your thoughts about it? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you're considering being very generous, consider joining just the $1 tier, either here on YouTube or over on Patreon. Links in the description. It definitely would help me out quite a bit. Or if you want to, actually get something tangible for your contribution, check out my minis. Adds one to your collection. Get something that is custom made by one of your favorite YouTubers, me, Mr. Sean. Until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean. This is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye.